The sunset was the last night of the year. The new year was slowly coming. The weather was very cold, it was snowing and it was getting dark. In such a cold and dark night, a poor girl was wandering in the alley with bare feet. When she came out of the house, she was wearing a pair of shoes, the shoes that her mother wore until the last day of her life. These shoes were very old, they had holes in several places, and they were so big for the girl's feet that they rattled when she walked. All this kept her feet warm. But when the girl wanted to rush through the 2 doors, the shoes came off her feet and each of them was thrown into a corner. One of them was not found at all. A boy took the other one and ran away until he grew up and God gave him children. He used it to make a cradle for his children. The girl was walking with her bare feet that were red and bruised from the cold. She had put several cans of matches in her old apron. She was also holding a can in her hand. In that whole day, no one had bought matches from her, and she had not even taken a black coin. Had not come a naive girl was hungry and shivering from the cold. He was a living image of pain and misery. The large perf seeds had whitened her long and golden hair, which was curled beautifully under her neck, but she didn't think about these things at all. Light poured out from the windows of all the houses and the sweet smell of fried goose filled the alley. It was New Year's Eve and the girl selling matches was only thinking about this night. There were 2 houses next to each other in the corner of the alley. One of the houses came a little further and created something like a shelter. The girl, who was tired, sat there and folded her little legs under her because of the cold. She was still cold. She thought it would be better to go back home, but she regretted it. He didn't have this job. He hadn't been able to sell even a single grain of match. If he went home, his father would beat him. The house was just as cold and dark as outside. There was no quilt or mattress in the house. They had nothing to cover except the roof. The door and wall of the house were full of holes and the wind rushes into the house through the holes. The seams and holes were covered with straw, but still the cold wind entered the house and made everything cold. The little girl's hands were numb from the cold. How nice it would be if she could light one of the matches, then she could warm her hands on it. He took out a match and put it on the wall. The match made a hissing sound and lit up. It was like a small candle and had a warm and bright flame. The girl took her hands like a bubble in front of the flame to warm them. In one of them, he found himself next to a big and beautiful heater whose legs were made of bronze. The heater was burning with pleasant heat, its blue flames fluttered and rose like birds with light wings. The room was full of blue birds, warm and charming. The girl wanted to stretch her legs to warm them. When the flame of the match went out, the heater also disappeared. The poor girl came to herself. Now she was left with a burnt match in her hand. What really it was a pleasant thought. He took out another match and lit it. When the light of the match fell on the wall became a thin and transparent curtain. The girl saw the inside of the hall, where a table was placed in the middle. A table as white as snow was wide on it, and delicate china dishes were seen on the table. A pleasant steam was rising from the fried goose whose stomach was filled with aloe. Kushi reached out to grab her, but suddenly the match went out and the poor girl found nothing but a thick gray wall. He lit another match. This time he imagined that he was sitting under a beautiful Christmas tree. This tree was much bigger, more beautiful and more magnificent than the tree that he had seen on New Year's Eve, in front of the window and in the house of a rich merchant. There were thousands of candles on the branches. Its green lights were burning and lighting up everywhere. Thousands of colored ribbons from the ones that are placed behind the glass of the shops stood out on the branches. The poor girl moved her little hands towards them. The match went out and the candle flames went up. They went higher and reached the sky, and the little girl saw that all of them became bright stars. Suddenly, one of the stars fell down and drew a long line of light in the sky. The girl thought to herself, "Oh, another man." Her grandmother, the only person who loved her, had told her this when she was alive. When a star falls from the sky, one person goes to God. The girl with hands that were numb from the cold. He lit another match on the wall and it lit up everywhere again, and the little girl saw the grandmother. The grandmother was looking at her with a kind and loving face that shone like the sun. "Is this a match? Like the warm fire of the stove, the Christmas tree and the fried goose. You go and leave me alone." Around the grandmother while she was laughing, she slowly calmed down. He took out what was left and turned it on. She wanted to keep her grandmother like this. The matches shone with such a dazzling light that the little girl had never seen in her dream, and everything became bright like day. He had never seen his grandmother so beautiful and calm. The grandmother took the little girl in her arms. They both rose into the air, went higher and higher, and reached a place where there was no cold, no hunger, no beating, and no door to door. Now both of them were in front of God. The next day, in the cold morning air, the poor girl, who had a soft smile on her face, was leaning against the wall in the corner of the street. She was frozen on the last night of the old year. The sun was shining on the corpse of a little girl on the first day of the year, who was sitting there cold and motionless with burnt matches. The passers-by were hurrying by, shaking their heads when they saw her and saying, "Poor girl." He wanted to warm himself. But none of them could imagine what beautiful things he had seen and with what splendor he had gone to greet the new year with his grandmother.